new 1.22 update coming around the corner, eventually. I hope that they'll announce something big like the end update, but for now all we can do is speculate and look at the things they've released so far. The minecarts, which are awesome, and the bundles, which suck. Minecraft has an increasingly worsening problem with its inventory. Yes, I know shulker boxes exist, but what are you gonna do? Fill up your inventory with shulker boxes? By the time you defeat the Ender Dragon and get on to building your modest hardcore starter base, like half your inventory is taken up by useful things, and there really isn't any way around that. I may be inclined to call it a design choice by Mojang, but the inventory just doesn't have any bearing on your strength as a player. It's just a measure of convenience. Bundles try to offer a way to combine small stacks into a big one, but honestly, the application is pretty limited and not practical at all. Most of my inventory problems aren't partial stacks, they're full stacks of deep slate from strip mining. It's my favorite activity. And if you say, oh, just toss some of that deep slate, no. What else am I gonna build my modest hardcore starter base out of? Despite their efforts over the years to cleverly outsmart issues with the base game and preserve original aspects of the game we all love, there just isn't any other way around this. Expand the inventory. So that's what I did. This simple inventory mod just adds an additional row to your inventory and increases the max default stack size to most blocks to 128. Now you'll have double the effective inventory space for building projects and mining, and you'll also have extra slots for non-stackables like tools and other oddities. It doesn't replace a proper storage system, but it does make survival a lot more convenient from an inventory standpoint. This mod is available for free on CurseForge and Modrinth for Neoforge 1.21.1. Links in the description. I made sure that it's compatible with some other popular inventory altering mods like Curios and JEI. Anything else, use at your own peril. If you have any compatibility suggestions or find any bugs or issues, feel free to comment on these mod pages or in the comments section below. Hope you enjoyed. Alright, now for the pain. So I'm actually working on a larger content mod right now. Progress is going good, but still, sometimes you need to take a break and come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes. So I started 2 new projects to change things up a bit. One focused on world gen, and the other on quality of life and inventory management. So I decided I'd finish and release the inventory one first, since it was definitely the simpler one. So I optimistically gave myself a 4-day development plan that I absolutely stayed on schedule for. I'm not exactly new to Minecraft modding. In fact, it's basically what got me into programming over a decade ago for version 1.7.10. But to be honest, I've never adventured into the more advanced parts of modding. I've only ever added some items, blocks, structures. So in order to figure this out, I used a few different points of reference. The first and most important of which is the decompiled Minecraft source code. You have full access to it here under external libraries. You can really see the inner workings of the game and how certain things work. There is also documentation online for each of the modding APIs available, be it Forge, Neoforge, or Fabric. It doesn't include anything about the base game code, but it does have a lot of information on anything included in the APIs like events and registries, which are very useful. Another good resource I found myself referring to a lot was modding tutorials available on YouTube. They are exactly what you'd expect. They show you how to add various things in the game. I highly recommend them if you've never modded the game before and are interested in doing so, or even if you have, but want to get up to speed on a new version quickly. I personally like the ones made by Copinjo, but there are a bunch of different series on YouTube by many different creators for pretty much all versions of the game if you look for them. And the last thing I used as reference was code from other mods. I use this JDGUI decompiler tool often to look at other mods and see how they were made as I went through the process. I'll be citing and referencing some other mods I looked at during the development as I come up on them. Alright, here we go. My original plan was to add an enchantment to the game that you could apply to each armor piece. The enchantment would be named Pockets, and each level would give you an extra inventory slot off to the left here. So, with a full set of Pockets for armor, you'd have an extra 16 inventory slots, which is pretty significant. And you'd also have access to this immediately from the inventory space as a direct extension. I knew this would be tricky to pull off, and I had no clue where to start, so I started searching for mods that extended the inventory as a reference. I initially found very little, but I did find a few mods that changed the item stack size and decided that increasing the stack size would be a good starting place and would significantly improve the inventory. The max stack of 64 is hard-coded into the game files under a few different classes, so they require a mixin to change the source code. To explain mixins very quickly, they look like this. You choose the class you're going to edit with this annotation, and then you can change the code inside using these methods here. This one searches for a constant integer value 64 within the item entity class and changes it to a different constant value of my choosing. In this case, 128 that I have defined here globally. I changed the values in the item stack class, the item entity class, and the container interface class. Once I did that, the default max stack was increased to 128. The only problem I really had with it was that the text on the item stacks with 3 digits were big and looked like they blended in with each other. So that was my first problem, and I decided to look for solutions tomorrow. Looking into the issue, the rendering of item stack decorations are also hard-coded in this GUI graphics class. So, I looked at the same item stack mods to see if they had a solution to the problem and ended up finding the bigger stacks mod by that guy. This mod had preposterously large stacks and was able to dynamically change the side of the render text based on the length of the number. So I borrowed some of the code in this one mix-in method for the GUI graphics class that would change the rendering size of the text. I ended up rendering all item stack text at 90% scale so that larger stacks would be a bit clearer when they're next to each other. So, now I started working on the inventory part. I added the pockets enchantment to the game with 0 functionality as a placeholder and started to look around at how I dynamically add additional inventory slots to the game. At this point, I still had no clue what I was doing. I ended up finding a mod by the name of Extra Inventory, and it did something similar to what I wanted to do. The problem was, it's a fabric mod, so I'd have to port it before I can use it. I knew there would be some differences, and it looked fairly trivial until... Where is the handled screen class? Where is the player handler? Where is it? It doesn't exist. Where is it? Turns out that fabric uses an intermediary, as in all the class mappings are different. Why? Not sure. I ended up finding this tool to look up the names, find the obfuscated class names for all of these names, and then find the vanilla mappings for the obfuscated name. I ended up doing this for all of these. After a while of that, I was able to port the mod to Neoforge so that I can have a reference to expand the inventory with. It seemed to work pretty well in survival mode, but it was slightly broken in creative mode. But that's not going to be a problem, is it? Before I continue, it'll be useful to explain the backend for the inventory now before I get into my own implementation. The items of the inventory are stored in the player class under the inventory field here. In the inventory class, it is broken down into its constituent parts, and in the inventory menu class, it is implemented. The full inventory has a size of 45, or 46 slots total, since programmers start counting at 0, not 1. Index 0 is the crafting results spot. Indexes 1 through 4 are the 2x2 crafting grid. Indexes 5 through 8 are the armor slots. 9 through 35 are the 3x9 slots of the inventory right here. 36 through 44 are the hotbar slots, and index 45 is the offhand slot. These values for the most part are hard-coded throughout the game. Everything that references the inventory references these values, so inevitably it's going to be a lot of mix-ins, because if I change the inventory here, all the other references have to change as well. Since I now know how the inventory is saved and how hard it was going to be to change it dynamically, I decided on abandoning the pockets enchantment altogether and just go for a flat base increase in inventory size. At first, things were going pretty smoothly. I started by changing this 36 to a 45, this 3 to a 4, adding an extra row here in the survival inventory, editing the inventory texture to have a new set of slots, and moving the hotbar down 18 GUI pixels to align with their new position. This surprisingly worked pretty well. Then I used a crafting table and realized that every single menu in the game is hard-coded with the vanilla inventory. So that meant changing this 3 to a 4, adding 18 to this, increasing the render frame by 18 pixels, redoing the texture, and changing any other inventory references 20 more times. Which, by the way, here's a little tip. If you're a programmer and you want to copy the same code 21 times, don't. Use a function. Put it somewhere easy to access, define it once, and call it 21 times. Don't do this. You might save a developer a few hours in the future. As I was wrapping up on development, only having 2 more checklist items left, being creative mode and compatibility with other mods, I made my way to creative mode to make sure that everything was fine there, and sure enough, it was very broken. Once I located the creative mode inventory screen class and the item picker menu class, I started to look for some values to change. I made the screen 18 pixels taller and added another row to the creative tabs to make it match the height of the survival inventory. That seemed to work alright, but then I was kinda lost. I had no idea where the actual survival inventory tab was being built. I had no idea where to find it. And then I ended up coming across this completely nonsensical AP Computer Science FRQ looking ass block of code. Feel free to pause the video if you want to figure out what it does. If these values look familiar and you said this builds the survival inventory, you'd be correct. Now for a bonus round. There's something a little off here. Can you find it? The survival inventory tab does not have the 2x2 crafting grid, but if you remember the indexes I mentioned earlier, they are clearly placed right here, somewhere off screen. So, if you're ever in creative mode wishing you had your survival crafting grid, and wondering where it went, just remember, it's always there for you. Right here. And by the way, you can totally move them back on screen. that everything is mostly done, time to test some stuff. I have no idea what I missed. I literally looked everywhere, and I've updated all the inventory references I came across, but something is still clearly broken. Generally speaking, most of these inventory references are surface level, alongside most of the content in the game. As you get deeper into the game code, you start to reach into engine territory, and none of that should have any hard-coded values or awkward content implementation. That's supposed to be in a higher layer, but once I went looking to solve the middle-click item picker functionality in creative mode, and found the code responsible in the Minecraft class, which by the way is exactly one call removed from the main method, yes, the main Java method, I started to have some doubts. I still had no idea why my blocks were ghosting and not actually existing in my inventory. So I showed the issue to a good friend of mine, and he showed me how to use breakpoints to look at values. It's pretty simple. Drop this red dot here, and whenever this code runs, the program stops executing and you get access to all of the values here. And you can step forward one step at a time to see everything clearly. When I got a closer look, turns out my suspicions were wrong. All the backend references were indeed completely working. I had yet to find the hard-coded issue. Where is this missing 45 I have to change?
Definition of insanity.
The definition of insanity.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer? It's all part of the plan. It's simple. Kill the Batman.
$45.
Okay, everything works now. Man, those 4 days really go by quickly. I definitely have some more ideas for a Pockets update in the future, especially now that I know how this whole inventory thing works, but for now, hope you enjoyed. More modding stuff coming soon.